Morning. Welcome to Bible study. Glad to have you here with us for another week as we journey through the entire book of Mark. We are at chapter 8, which means we are now officially halfway through the book of Mark, which is a big reason to congratulate yourself. But we have still yet to get to the good part. So I'm glad that you are here with us today, whether you're here with us live, which if so, thanks for being here. Or whether you're here by delay. I know that sometimes I see people watching them 4, 5, 6 weeks after the fact. So if so, we're glad that you're just spending time with Jesus, no matter when that is or how that is. It's been a great study so far, and I hope that you're enjoying it. I know that certainly I am as well. Today's study brought to you by Christ Table. If you've not already done so, I make this plug all the time. Why not just go ahead and do it so I can stop saying it? ChristTable.today. Go over there, sign up for the email list. Got an email coming out in a day or two to give you an update about everything that's going on, especially some exciting things that are coming up for Easter. And so glad to have you along for the ride. If you have not already downloaded this, there is a link attached to this post, and you can download the entire reading plan from the Lent reading series. It will take you all the way to Easter. You don't need to feel the need to catch up. You can start right where we are and continue with us all the way to Easter Sunday morning, Resurrection Sunday morning, which is coming quite quickly in less than a month. But today we find ourselves in Mark chapter 8, and I am particularly excited about this passage. I enjoy this one, in fact. And so I'm going to try to limit what I say about it. And this is just a portion of the day's reading. There is a lot more to today's reading than just what we're going to look at. And it was kind of tough to choose what was in there, but finally decided on this one to cover for today. As always, if you have questions, if you have comments, you can always post them in the comment feed, and I'll check back in regularly just to see what the dialogue is and if there's anything that comes up that we need to continue to talk about. So, Mark chapter 8, verse 1. About this time, another large crowd had gathered. It's almost like Mark is kind of smiling when he writes this, because he's spoken a lot about the large crowds that gather around Jesus, that follow him, that he's unable to get away from. Yesterday, we talked about it with the Syrophoenician lady, the Canaanite, as Matthew called her. And this has been kind of a continuing recurring theme, is this large crowd presence around Jesus that, a bit comically, Jesus is always kind of trying to get away from. We remember the huge crowds and the big miracles and the big flashy things that Jesus does, but he seemed to prefer smaller conversations, usually shared over dinner tables. And so Mark seems to point out the fact that that wasn't necessarily what the people were interested in, even if it was what Jesus himself was interested in. So about this time, another large crowd had gathered, and the people ran out of food again. You may remember that something similar has happened another time. So Jesus called his disciples and he told them, I have compassion on these people, or the way this version renders it, I feel sorry for these people. They've been here with me for 3 days and they have nothing left to eat. And so this wasn't just a come and drop in for a few hours and leave. These large crowds that are following Jesus have really literally kind of dropped everything in their lives in order to hear his teaching and see the miracles that he's doing. They've left behind their families, or many of them have brought their entire families with them. They've left behind their jobs. They've left behind the cities in which they're in to spend time out on the open plain or out on the road following Jesus, to try to secure their healing, or to try to find more about this, or simply to be in his presence. So this time, this crowd has been with them for 3 days. It seemed as though maybe they knew that there would be an extended period where they would be away from home, so they brought supplies with them. But apparently things had been going so smashingly that they decided to stay. They stayed too long, and now they're running out of food. We've seen this before, right? Jesus says, if I send them home hungry, they're going to faint along the way, for some of them have come a long distance. So, why is Jesus thinking out loud here? Why is he saying this? Jesus could just create food for them. Um, so why is he rattling through this dilemma out loud? It's not because Jesus doesn't know how to solve this problem. So there must be some other reason as to why Jesus is verbalizing this situation to his disciples. If I send them home hungry, they're going to faint before they get home. Some of them have come a long distance. Peter, Andrew. What do you think we should do? His disciples reply, how are we supposed to find enough food to feed them out here in the wilderness? So if I were to attach an image or an emoji to the disciples at this point, whenever the perplexing problem is proposed, that was quite the alliteration there. If I were to create an emoji image for the moment when this perplexing problem is proposed to the disciples, this would be it. People are there without food. They've been there for 3 days now and eaten through all of their reserves. They can't go home without food because they will faint and die along the way. They're out in the wilderness, which if you've been to Israel, especially on the south side of the country or outside of the borders, lots of wilderness areas. And so it could be a potentially very dangerous situation for these people. So Jesus poses the problem to them and they're all like, got me. Turning their pockets inside out. I don't have enough money to buy food for a large gathering of people. Offerings haven't been good enough, Jesus, to support thousands of people, so I'm not sure what to do. That's the disciples. And if I were to, at this point, choose an image for Jesus, it would probably be this, or the face palm emoji. Jesus didn't pose the problem to them because there wasn't a solution. There is a solution. Create food. Jesus didn't propose a problem to them because he didn't know the best way to fulfill that. And he also didn't propose it because they didn't know the best way to fulfill this. I'll tell you what I mean here, that this is really a facepalm moment for the disciples. We're going to see it if we keep reading. Jesus is like, ugh, oi. Okay. Deep breath. How much bread do we have, guys? 7 loaves, Jesus. So Jesus draws a deep breath, looks around at everyone, looks back at his disciples and says, all right, everybody, sit down. This is where it gets good. Then he takes the 7 loaves, he thanks God for them, and he breaks them into pieces. Now, are you having deja vu here yet? And he gave them to his disciples, who distributed the bread to the crowd. A few small fish were found too. Are you remembering this? Is this triggering anything for you? It's supposed to. It should have triggered something for them as well. Shocker, they find loaves of bread. Jesus blesses them, breaks them into pieces, gives them the disciples, who distributes the bread to the crowd. And they just happen to find a few small fish as well. So Jesus says, all right, I'll bless these too. And he told his disciples to distribute those as well. And everyone ate as much as they wanted. And afterward, the disciples picked up 7 large baskets of food. Are you having deja vu at all with this? And then the writer, Mark, gives us a little bit of commentary here when he says in verse 9, and there were about 4,000 men in the crowd that day, and Jesus sent them home after they have eaten. And so immediately after this, Jesus gets into the boat with the disciples and he crosses over to the region of Dalmanutha. Now, this is essentially what I would call a rerun miracle. We have already read through this miracle where there is no food. There is a large crowd that has gathered. They've been with Jesus for an entire day, it says in that miracle. So they find the little boy. The little boy has loaves of bread, 5 loaves of bread, and two fish. And so in that moment, Jesus blesses it, breaks it, places it in a basket, distributes it, and about 5,000 men, it says, were fed that way, obviously assuming there were women and children there as well, in addition to that 5,000. So you read through this, and a lot of commentators over the years have said, well, this is the same story, but it's a different perspective on the same story. It's the same event, the feeding of thousands of people. Well, it's not. The details matter. The author, Mark, has gone to great lengths to ensure that we understand that this is 2 separate events. There were one day, the first time, several days, 3 days here the second time. The first time, there were 5 loaves. The second time, there were 7 loaves. The first time, there were 2 fish. The second time, it just says a few small fish. The first time, there were 5,000. The second time, there were 4,000. These are 2 entirely separate miracles. And this is why I call this a rerun miracle. It's a situation where Jesus really is facepalming and saying, really? Like, I understand that you may not see or expect me to calm the winds or the waves because you've never seen that before. I understand that you may not expect me to bring a young girl back from the dead. You've not seen that before. I understand that you may not expect me to bring sight to a blind man. You've not seen that before. I can understand how you might not expect me to cause a lame man lifted down through a roof to walk because you've not seen that before. I understand how you could not expect so many of these things to happen and to be surprised because you've not seen this before. But darn, you've seen this one before. Like literally the exact same scenario. People there don't have food. Ask for where food is. We have no money to buy food. Well, what do you have? Well, we have 7 loaves and a few fish. Well, Jesus, what are you going to do with that? I'm going to do the same thing I did 2 weeks ago. It's a rerun miracle. Jesus isn't trying to teach the people something here. Jesus is trying to teach his disciples something here. And really, when we look at what we're running through in the book of Mark, this is what we see. Most of what Jesus is doing is trying to teach and educate the 12. Now, he's, as we kind of said yesterday, throwing some scraps, off the table to everybody else. The large crowds and the Gentiles and those people who are kind of in his orbit are getting something out of this. They're learning about the kingdom of God. They're experiencing a deepening of their faith. But at the end of the day, the real focus of Jesus' ministry, almost fully, is on teaching these disciples. And it seems like it took 3.5 years at least in order to do that. And even at the death, burial, and resurrection, even at Easter, they still didn't understand it. They all went back to their own lives because they had no idea what Jesus was trying to do or who he was. And so this is a rerun miracle where Jesus is kind of taking their head and kind of trying to pound directly into their head. Come on. Can you not see this? And here it is. I know that a few of you have kind of maybe struggled a little bit with this interpretation of Mark, but I get it. It kind of blows your mind a little bit when you think about it because it's a little counterintuitive. But this is what Jesus is saying to them here. You must do what you can't do with power that you don't have. Jesus is essentially saying there to them, you should have seen this. You should have seen that I would be able, or you would be able to, through my power, do this in order to feed people through your faith. And you should have faith because you've seen this done before. How terrible does your faith have to be to have seen a miracle and to see the same setup again days later, and to not have faith that there's any other way to solve this problem than the natural way? Jesus says you must do what you can't do with power that you don't have. Now, the disciples are going to get this. They are. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more teaching. It's actually going to take a death for them to understand this. And it's going to take more than one rerun miracle. It's going to take Jesus showing them over and over and over again that he means what he says, and that they have the power to move mountains if they will only have faith. Not everybody's going to get it, though. And I want to go one more verse deep. I want to go to verse 11 here, right after Jesus clears the area and heads to a different location. Mark continues in with the commentary, and he says, when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had arrived at Dalmatha, is where he is, they came and they started to argue with him. Same story, different day. Testing him, they demanded that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. Now, I've never stopped and thought about this before, but the Pharisees have been dogging Jesus since the very beginning of his ministry. And by this point, we're here in what Mark chapter 8, Jesus has done so many miracles, given so many signs, has done so many miraculous, wondrous things that anybody who had seen or even heard or had connection to what he had done would know that he had authority. And so what we're going to see here is that the Pharisees and the religious leaders are going to continue to ask Jesus. In fact, demand is the word that the New Living Translation uses here in English. Demand that Jesus show them a miraculous sign to prove his authority. Usually in these situations, Jesus is not going to fulfill that demand. But why would he fulfill that demand? You'd say, well, if you would just do it, Jesus, then they would believe in you and everything would be okay, and you might not be crucified. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Not with people like this. They weren't trying to prove his authority from heaven. They were trying to trap him. And it didn't matter how many wondrous signs he would have done right in front of their eyes, involving their families. The hard-hearted will never believe, because the only thing that they believe in is themselves. Jesus had been doing miraculous signs and wonders everywhere. These people had seen them, but they're going to continue to try to bait him in order to trap him so that they might destroy him. And this doesn't just happen with Jesus. This happens with those who choose to follow Jesus as well. No matter what you do for God, no matter how many wondrous things, no matter how strong your faith is, no matter what mountains are moved, there are going to be some people who are never going to see it, who are never going to believe it, who are always going to be asking for more from you, are always going to be saying that you are less than, are always going to be misjudging you and mischaracterizing you. There are going to be those people who are going to say that you're doing things for the wrong reasons, for your own selfish ambitions, and are never going to see the good that God is doing in you and through you. Why is that? Well, because they don't want to see it. The Pharisees didn't want to see it. The Pharisees already had hardened their hearts in a way that gave them peace and comfort. And so it didn't matter what miraculous thing Jesus did. They were never going to come to faith in him. And there are those people out there who, no matter what miraculous, faith-filled, God-centered thing that you do, are never going to believe that you're acting on behalf of God. And like Jesus, there are some people out there who are going to seek to destroy you, to sideline you, to entrap you for their own selfish ambition. You can't control that, but as a follower of Jesus Christ, you just have to know that that's out there. That sometimes, no matter how like Christ you are, there's always going to be a Judas. Not even Jesus got away from that. Well, I hope that this has been a blessing to you, this Rerun Miracle. It has been to me today, and it's been a blessing to have you alongside us. Why don't you go to christtable.today, check it out, get your name on the email list so that I can stop talking about it. But until tomorrow, it's been good to have you with us, and happy reading.